rest your mind. The journey begins in silence. There is a quiet moment that arrives before sleep, a moment where the world loosens its grip and lets everything drift just a little. In that moment, even the heaviest stone can feel as light as a breath. And in that gentle drifting, stories of old places begin to hum like lullabies on warm air. Tonight, let us wander into one of those stories, softly, slowly, with the calm curiosity of someone strolling through a dream that asks for nothing in return. Imagine a landscape that doesn't hurry, a horizon unbothered by time, and a distant silhouette of ancient walls glowing like embers, resting after a long day. We are not rushing anywhere. We are simply arriving, the way a feather arrives on an open palm. Breathe in the quiet. Let the silence expand. Allow each word to settle beside you like a friend who has learned not to speak too loudly, because this story is not meant to awaken anything except comfort. As we begin, picture a path winding through soft dusk, the light fading in honey-gold ribbons, the air as gentle as a sigh. Imagine the warmth lingering on the stones, as though the day itself left behind a sleepy good night. Imagine a breeze that has traveled far but has no urgent news to deliver, only a soft invitation to keep walking forward, step by patient step. In this stillness, even history behaves differently. It does not shout, it does not demand, it does not insist on being remembered. Instead, it settles calmly beside you, placing its head on your shoulder with the same trust as a drifting dream. It knows you are not here for dramatic battles or loud legends. You are here for the quiet glow of stories that survived simply by standing still. Sometimes the most magnificent places in the world reveal themselves best in whispers. Their grandeur becomes gentler, their walls kinder, their presence much more like a familiar melody than a monument. So tonight, let the tale unfold, with no sharp corners, no heavy shadows, just smooth edges, soft light, and the peaceful rhythm of time walking barefoot. Perhaps you can hear faint footsteps from centuries ago, not urgent or echoing, but slow and unhurried, as if someone once strolled here the same way you do now, mind drifting, shoulders relaxed, spirit wandering without expectation. And maybe, if you listen closely, you can hear ancient laughter too, the modest kind, the quiet kind, the kind that tumbles out when someone notices something charmingly imperfect about a very serious building. Yes, even grand structures can have a sense of humor. After all, they spend centuries watching humans hurry past them, pretending to be very important. The buildings know better. They know that time is a patient storyteller, and that everything, every king, every visitor, every stone, eventually learns to rest. Tonight, let that patience wrap around you. Let it smooth every wrinkle of your thoughts. Let it soften your breath until it matches the silent rhythm of distant architecture standing beneath a sky full of stars. We are almost at the threshold now, almost ready to step into a world built of red sandstone sunsets and marble moonlight, but there is no rush. Feel your mind loosen, feel the day dissolve, feel the gentle weightlessness that arrives when you surrender to a story told as softly as this one. As we reach this moment of calm, where your thoughts drift like lanterns on still water, let every part of you settle and sink into ease. For the place we are going to visit is not just a fortress, it is a quiet companion of centuries. A structure that has mastered the art of simply existing in peace. When you are ready, and only when you gently feel ready, let us step forward together, toward Agra, toward the fort that breathes in silence, toward a masterpiece that has been patiently waiting to be seen through sleepy, serene eyes. Agra Fort enters the story not with noise, but with a warm, steady presence, like a deep red sunset settling across the horizon. Built from sandstone that glows softly in fading light, this magnificent Mughal creation stands with a calm confidence, neither boastful nor shy, simply existing in the way an ancient tree does, rooted, enduring, peaceful. It rests along the Yamuna River, holding within its walls centuries of thoughtfully shaped spaces, each one crafted to carry both beauty and quiet strength. As you move closer, the architectural harmony begins to unfold. The fort's reddish exterior carries the warmth of earth and time, while the interiors reveal pale marble that seems to hold a soft, moonlit shimmer, even during daylight. This contrast, red embracing white, earth meeting light, creates a gentle visual rhythm, as though the building itself enjoys switching between boldness and softness whenever it pleases. Mughal design blended influences from Persia, Turkey, and India, and yet the final result feels surprisingly tranquil, as if all the styles agreed to whisper instead of sing. Inside, one discovers courtyards, halls, and gardens that breathe with serene spaciousness. The marble carvings, delicate arches, and polished surfaces feel like the architectural equivalent of lullabies, art that was made to soothe as much as impress. Agra Fort was once home to Mughal emperors, but even in its grandeur, it maintains an atmosphere of calm dignity rather than overwhelming power. And so, as we gently transition into its story, we follow not the path of conquest or glory, but a quieter trail, one where stone remembers softness, history moves slowly, and every corner invites you to rest for just a moment longer. Chapter 1: Agra. The Red Monument that learned to stand still. There is a tender moment in the life of every evening when the sunlight grows sleepy, stretching itself into long, warm threads, before finally curling up behind the horizon. It is the moment when everything begins to breathe a little slower, as though the world itself is settling into a comfortable chair and letting its shoulders drop. In this softened hour, stories that have been resting quietly throughout the day begin to stir, waking with gentle curiosity. And among all the resting stories scattered across the earth, few awaken with as much serene dignity as the story of Agra Fort. Agra Fort does not leap into view the way some monuments do. It does not shout for attention or glitter like a jewel desperate to be admired. No, Agra Fort prefers a calmer entrance. It rises slowly from the heart of the city like a great red sandstone hill that once decided it might as well become a fortress, simply because it had the time and the patience to do so. Its walls stand thick and unwavering, not rigid but peacefully grounded, as if the entire structure has mastered the ancient and noble art of "I am here, and that is enough." To see Agra Fort is to witness stillness wearing the shape of architecture. The fort does not tremble, does not lean, and certainly does not rush. You get the sense that even if a millennium of wind whispered, "Move just a little," the fort would smile politely and reply, "No, thank you. I'm quite comfortable right here." That is the charm of this red giant. It exudes peace not by intention, but simply by existing. The Mughal builders who shaped the fort long ago worked with immense skill, yet the result feels so natural, so effortlessly calm, that one might imagine the earth itself gently nudging the sandstone blocks into place. There is a softness to its appearance that belies its strength, the way a sleeping elephant might look gentle and huggable, even though you absolutely should not attempt to hug it. The reddish glow of the stone carries warmth, even after the sun has disappeared, as if it stores sunlight, the way a cozy blanket stores body heat. Walking toward the fort feels like approaching a wise old companion, one who has seen countless years drift by like feathers and has learned not to be bothered by any of them. The walls rise with quiet confidence, not to impress, but to reassure. They do not loom over you with a sense of threat. Instead, they greet you with the calm, steady presence of something that has witnessed time settle repeatedly and has learned to weather it with grace. As your footsteps draw you closer, the fort seems to slow your pace without ever asking you to do so. Something about its ancient stillness gently tugs at the rhythm of your breath, making each inhale a little deeper and each exhale a little longer. The air around it feels different, not heavier, not lighter, just more peaceful, as though it has been filtered through centuries of patience. The walls, smooth in some places and textured in others, carry the soft fingerprints of time. They have felt the touch of countless seasons brushing against them, summer's heat, monsoon rains humming lullabies, winter winds tracing delicate patterns. Each stone holds stories so old they have forgotten how to speak loudly. Now they whisper in the faintest breaths of history, telling only what the moment is calm enough to receive. And perhaps the most endearing thing about Agra Fort is the sense of humor hidden in its silence. There is something quietly amusing about a structure this massive choosing stillness as its defining trait. Imagine a fortress capable of withstanding armies, simply deciding instead to sit peacefully and admire the sunset for several hundred years. It feels like the architectural version of a monk who once trained for war, but then discovered tea, meditation, and the joy of napping. The closer you come to the fort, the more its presence fills your senses, not with grandeur, but with a grounding serenity. It stands as though whispering, "There is no rush. You may take your time," and you believe it because everything in its posture radiates ease. Its towers gaze over the horizon, not like vigilant guards, but like old philosophers who enjoy watching clouds drift by. Stepping even closer to Agra Fort, the world behind you begins to dissolve into a gentle blur, like watercolor left in warm sunlight. The bustling sounds of the city soften until they resemble nothing more than a distant murmur, a sleepy conversation carried by the wind. The air within the fort's shadow feels velvety, as though it has been resting there for centuries, waiting to greet anyone willing to slow down enough to notice it. With every step, the red sandstone seems to glow a little deeper, not brighter, but warmer, like embers that have no intention of burning, only illuminating in the softest possible way. The fort does not judge your pace. It doesn't mind whether you move quickly or slowly, but somehow, through an invisible kind of hospitality, it gently convinces you to take your time. Even the breeze appears to stroll more leisurely here, drifting in long, unhurried ribbons that brush your skin like a sigh that forgot its purpose halfway through. The more you observe the fort, the more peculiar and delightful its stillness becomes. It is vast, monumental, grand in every architectural sense, yet it possesses the temperament of someone who has discovered that stillness is not a lack of action, but a kind of quiet wisdom. One could imagine the fort politely declining centuries of drama with the calm statement, "I prefer peace, thank you." Its walls, so solid and enduring, do not boast about their strength. They simply witness the passing of time as gently as one might watch clouds meander across a sleepy afternoon sky. If you let your hand hover close to the sandstone, you might feel the faint warmth stored from the day, a warmth that seeps slowly into the air as though the stone itself is exhaling. That warmth holds stories not of war or conflict, but of sunrises sliding over the ramparts, of moonlight settling softly like dust, of monsoon rains humming their own lullabies against the sturdy exterior. These stories do not shout to be heard. They drift like quiet ripples in a lake, waiting patiently for a calm mind to receive them. Though the fort has seen emperors come and go, it has not allowed that history to sit heavily upon it. Instead, it wears the centuries lightly, almost playfully. It is as if Agra Fort has decided that being ancient does not mean being burdened. Perhaps this is why there is a touch of subtle humor in its presence, the kind of humor found in someone who has watched generations rush around anxiously while learning through long experience that most things work out just fine in the end. If the fort could wink, it probably would. As the sun continues to sink, the shadows along the walls deepen, stretching like sleepy cats preparing for dreams. The light that remains becomes soft, buttery, and tender, smoothing every sharp edge into a gentle curve. Within this golden quiet, the fort seems to expand in presence without ever moving, like a deep breath that fills the space around you without lifting a single stone. Being here, even only in imagination, feels like stepping into a sanctuary built not for worship or ceremony, but for rest. The fort does not ask you to admire it. It does not demand reverence. Instead, it offers something far simpler and infinitely rarer, a place where your thoughts are allowed to loosen, uncoil, and drift. It offers the kind of silence that does not feel empty but full, as though every quiet moment has been carefully cultivated over centuries until it has ripened into peace. Walking along the base of the towering walls feels like strolling beside a mountain that decided to wear jewelry. The sandstone's rich red hue is the base, while the subtle textures formed by wind, rain, and time serve as delicate adornments crafted not by artisans but by patience itself. Even the imperfections feel intentional, contributing to a sense of character and calm depth. And as you keep moving, perhaps with footsteps soft enough to blend into the rhythm of the fort's own stillness, something begins to shift within you. You may notice your breath falling into sync with the space. Inhale the steady strength of centuries. Exhale the warmth of sandstone releasing its day. Inhale the quiet wisdom of endurance. Exhale the softness of shadows settling down to sleep. The more time you spend in the presence of Agra Fort, the more it becomes clear that its beauty does not come from extravagance or complexity. Its beauty lies in the simplest of truths. It has chosen to remain. It has chosen to stand still. And in doing so, it has become a gentle reminder of resilience. Not the loud kind, but the kind that keeps its voice soft, its heart warm, and its posture grounded. There is something profoundly comforting about a monument that has survived storms, seasons, and centuries, yet still manages to emit the same peaceful energy as a quiet old friend, sharing tea with the twilight. Agra Fort is, in many ways, a masterpiece of calm, a structure that teaches through presence rather than words. As you finally step back and let your gaze travel across the wide sweep of its walls, one more time, the fort seems to whisper a lesson it has learned over the ages. Stillness, too, is a kind of strength. And in that gentle truth, the story of Agra Fort settles into you, warm, patient, and softly glowing, like the last light of a day preparing to rest. Chapter 2. A 2.5-kilometer wall. History's slow and steady marathon. There is a gentle kind of magic that begins to shimmer when you imagine a wall that has quietly wrapped itself around history for centuries. Not a dramatic wall, not a fierce wall, not the sort of wall that leaps into stories with fire and thunder, but a calm, steady, unbothered wall. Agra Fort's outer walls stretch for 2.5 kilometers, rising in warm red sandstone between 16 and 33 meters high, and yet their presence feels softer than their size would suggest. They do not tower over you with intimidation. Instead, they stand like peaceful giants who have mastered the art of slow breathing. If stone could sigh, these walls would be doing it right now. Long, deep, relaxed sighs that drift lazily into the afternoon air. As you begin to imagine walking beside them, the rhythm of your steps naturally slows, not out of exhaustion, but out of a strange sense that the walls themselves prefer a gentle pace. They seem to have a philosophy about movement. Take your time, no need to rush. We've been here for hundreds of years, and we're not going anywhere. And truly, that is how they feel. Like marathon runners caught in an eternal moment of serene stillness, as though they began the race long ago, realized there was no finish line worth sprinting toward, and instead chose to stroll, then pause, then simply stand forever in peaceful silence. The red sandstone absorbs light in the most tender way. During sunrise, it glows as though infused with honey. During sunset, it warms into a soft ember-like hue, soothing to the eyes and comforting to the heart. The surface is textured by time, smoothed slightly where seasons have brushed their fingertips across it, rougher where centuries left gentle reminders of endurance. Yet at every angle, the wall radiates a quiet kindness, like a warm blanket laid across the landscape. Beneath the massive structure lies the moat, once a strategic defense, but now more like a sleepy ribbon of water lounging at the wall's feet. Its curve around the fort is elegant, never hurried, shimmering faintly like liquid silver that hasn't decided whether it wants to be awake or dreaming. If moats had personalities, this one would absolutely be the calm friend of the group, the one who listens patiently, nods often, and rarely ripples unless the wind politely asks. It does not roar or rush, it merely rests, creating a soft boundary between the fort and the rest of the world. Together, the wall and the moat form a gentle duet. The wall stands tall and steady, the moat lies low and relaxed, and between them is a quiet conversation, a conversation that has drifted on for centuries without a single argument. It is a peaceful relationship, one built on mutual respect and a shared devotion to stillness. You can almost imagine the wall saying, "I'll keep standing," and the moat responding, "And I'll keep flowing," very, very slowly. It is strange, in the loveliest way, how something built for war can feel so utterly serene. Perhaps the walls have forgotten their original purpose, or perhaps they simply outgrew it. Time can soften even the most rigid intentions, and here, time has done more than soften. It has mellowed, soothed, and transformed. What once served as defense now serves as a boundary of tranquility, holding the noise of the world at arm's length, giving the fort a space to breathe. The wall has seen countless footsteps, stories, and passing lives. It has witnessed emperors walking with grandeur, guards pacing with discipline, workers moving with purpose, and travelers strolling with awe. Yet it seems to treat all footsteps equally, absorbing them with patience, letting their echoes dissolve into the warm fabric of stone. Nothing is rushed here. Even echoes take their time. And then there is the way the wall curves, never sharply, never abruptly, but with mellow, sweeping lines. Like a gentle embrace around the fort, the curvature suggests warmth rather than warning, welcome rather than warning. A wall that bends instead of breaks, that shapes itself in harmony with the land, that stands firm without shouting for attention. That is the quiet charm of Agra Fort's outer boundary. If you pause for a moment in this imaginary walk, you might feel how the atmosphere thickens with calm. The air holds a softness, a muted sort of glow, as though sunlight itself has lowered its voice. The world beyond the wall still moves, still rushes, still chatters, but from here it all feels pleasantly distant, like a conversation taking place in another room. The wall knows how to separate without isolating, how to protect without imprisoning. Its presence says, "Inside here, we rest." Even birds seem to understand this. Their songs, when sung atop the high sandstone ramparts, have a gentler tone, as if they have learned from the wall that peace is a melody worth practicing. Sometimes a bird may flutter dramatically, but more often they glide calmly, as if joining the wall in its centuries-long meditation. And as you continue along the path, feeling the slow rhythm of your breath meet the slow rhythm of the ancient stone beside you, a realization begins to form. This wall is not merely architecture. It is an invitation to slow down, to breathe deeply, to exist without urgency, to be still just for a moment in the presence of something that has perfected stillness. As you continue your gentle walk along the long, unhurried curve of Agra Fort's outer wall, a strange and pleasant realization begins to bloom inside you, almost like a soft lantern being lit in slow motion. You begin to sense that the wall is not merely a structure, but a presence, a companion, a quietly humorous friend who has spent centuries perfecting the art of doing absolutely nothing and doing it beautifully. The deeper you drift into this moment, the more the atmosphere changes. The noise of the city fades until it is nothing more than a distant hum, a blurry background texture that feels too tired to demand attention. Here, beneath the shadow of a 2.5-kilometer ribbon of ancient sandstone, the world moves differently. It breathes differently. Even time seems to forget itself a little, becoming soft around the edges, as if stretching lazily after a long nap. The wall does not mind being old. In fact, it wears age with a kind of playful dignity. Each layer of sandstone feels like a page in a diary written by sunlight, breezes, and the occasional curious bird who perhaps mistook the top of the wall for a stage. The wall, patient as ever, allows them all, sun, wind, rain, birds, to leave their little marks. Not grand, not dramatic, but quiet impressions that fade gently into its warm, red skin. If you close your eyes for a moment, you might hear the faintest echo of history humming beneath your feet. Not loud enough to disturb, not sharp enough to awaken, but just present enough to remind you that centuries once wandered these pathways. Perhaps a royal procession moved past here long ago, with jeweled elephants, embroidered canopies, and music drifting like perfume in the air. Or maybe a lone guard once paced here slowly, matching his steps to the steady mood of the fort, never rushing, never worrying, simply becoming one with the rhythm of these ancient stones. What is most enchanting is how the wall manages to hold all of these memories without ever feeling heavy. It is not a burdened structure, it is a peaceful one. It has learned, somehow, to let history flow through it like water, leaving only the lightest traces. Even the moat, lying quietly beneath, mirrors this gentle wisdom. Its surface might ripple softly when the wind glides by, but even that ripple seems half asleep, as if unsure whether it wants to finish forming. As the day drifts toward evening, the sandstone deepens in color, slipping into a shade of red that feels almost velvety. Shadows stretch along the wall's base like sleepy cats, curling at the corners and settling down for their nightly rest. Beneath this softening light, the wall appears even more serene, an ancient marathon runner who never cared about winning, only about enjoying the view for several hundred years and counting. There is something deliciously humorous about the way the wall insists on doing everything slowly. If it could speak, you imagine it would say something like, "Why rush? The world is wide and time is patient." Its personality feels almost meditative, calm, observant, wise in a quiet way, and occasionally amused by the hurried footsteps of modern visitors who still haven't learned the lesson it teaches simply by existing. The closer you walk, the more you sense the symmetry between your breathing and the wall's silent rhythm. Inhale, warmth. Exhale, ease. Inhale, strength without strain. Exhale, the gentle weightlessness that comes from being near something far older, far calmer, and far more patient than anything you encounter in the bustling present. Maybe this is why the wall feels so comforting. It does not demand anything from you. It does not challenge or confront. It simply stands beside you, offering a space where stillness is not only allowed but encouraged, a place where the mind loosens, the heart softens, and the familiar pressures of life drift a little farther away with each slow step. Sometimes, when the light hits just right, you might imagine the wall smiling, not a big toothy grin. Walls rarely do that, but a subtle, satisfied smile, the kind that says, "Yes, this moment is enough." And somehow, without any effort, the moment is enough. The wall teaches this truth without speaking, without moving, without insisting. Stillness has its own kind of strength. As you finally approach the end of this long, peaceful stretch, The wall curves away in a gentle farewell, almost like a giant waving quietly with the movement of its shadow. The moat glimmers once more, catching the last blush of sunset before sinking into evening's soft embrace. And the wind, now slower than before, brushes past you as if whispering a final note in a lullaby sung by stone and water. The marathon of history continues, steady, slow, and beautifully unhurried. But for now, in this tranquil corner beneath a 2.5-kilometer guardian carved from time itself, you feel held, quieted, and gently invited into rest. Chapter 3. Two Gates. A grand greeting without the drama. There is a certain softness in the air the moment you approach the twin gateways of Agra Fort, a softness that feels almost as if the world itself is taking a slow, deep breath. These two gateways, Delhi Gate and Amar Singh Gate, do not rise with the sharpness of intimidation or the boldness of triumph. Instead, they stand like two elegant greeters, welcoming every visitor with a calm, unhurried dignity, as though their true purpose is not to guard but to guide. And perhaps that is why their presence feels more like a gentle bow than an imposing barrier, a warm hello carved into stone across centuries. Delhi Gate, the elder of the two, stands with a kind of royal ease, the kind that comes naturally to someone who has been admired for hundreds of years and no longer feels the need to try. The detailing along its arch seems to hum softly, like embroidery stitched into sandstone by a patient hand. There is nothing rushed about its design. Every line curves as if it has taken its time to reach its destination, enjoying the long, slow journey. One can almost imagine the artisans sculpting the patterns while humming lullabies, letting the rhythm of their breath shape the art. Beside it, though not directly facing, Amar Singh Gate serves as the fort's current entrance, and it carries its own flavor of quiet charm. Imagine a guardian with perfect posture, someone who knows their role is important but refuses to be stern about it. The gate's patterns echo the elegance of Mughal finesse, but without any theatrical flair. Instead of shouting grandeur, it whispers refinement. Instead of demanding attention, it invites admiration. Its curves float gently like wisps of music in the air, lingering just long enough to be beautiful, never loud enough to disturb. Standing before these two gates, one begins to feel the subtle shift between the world outside and the world within. But this shift is not abrupt. It is not the kind that grabs your shoulders and spins you around. No, it is a quiet transition, like stepping from sunlight into shade or from chatter into soft murmur. The gates act as thresholds between rhythms, the quick rhythm of the city and the slower, deeper rhythm of the fort. If the outside world is a lively conversation, then the world within the fort is a melodic hum drifting across ancient courtyards. Imagine walking toward Delhi Gate first, the stone warm beneath the sunlight, almost glowing with a rosy hue. You lift your gaze and the gate seems to lift with you, rising without effort, without pride, just existing in a calm sort of majesty. You sense its history, but the history does not overwhelm you. It simply settles beside you like a gentle companion saying, "Take your time. I have all the time in the world." That patience seeps into your steps, slowing them, softening them, until your movement mirrors the timeless posture of the gate itself. As you approach Amar Singh Gate, you notice something almost humorous in its stance, an unspoken personality, a subtle friendliness. It stands like someone who is used to opening the door for guests, but never rushes the gesture. If a gate could smile politely, this one would. Its arch frames the path like an invitation to a peaceful dream, one where nothing urgent exists and everything settles into an easy, quiet rhythm. And yet, for all their gentle charm, these gates carry the quiet glory of craftsmanship. Their details are not loud, but they are undeniably intricate, like the delicate notes of a lullaby played on an old, beloved instrument. The floral carvings curl and twist as if carried by a breeze that was kind enough not to wake anyone. The geometric patterns are precise but never rigid, like dancers moving slowly, gracefully, in a trance of harmony. These gates once witnessed kings, queens, soldiers, and ceremonies, footsteps of many eras passing beneath them, but they never absorbed the chaos or carried the tension. Instead, they seemed to smooth everything into calmness. Even the busiest procession likely softened its volume upon approaching them. It's difficult to imagine anyone marching loudly beneath such serene arches. The very air here seems to request gentleness. You might pause between the two gates, noticing how the world feels slightly hushed. The breeze shifts differently. The light leans differently. Your thoughts, too, begin to behave more softly. The gates stand like two guardians of tranquility, quietly sweeping away the hurried pace of life and replacing it with something slower, smoother, almost like the rhythm of a song being hummed half asleep. And in that softened space there is humor as well. Not laughter, not jokes, but that kind of quiet amusement found in things that simply exist without effort. The gates, with all their grandeur, also feel a little like two old friends who have spent centuries greeting visitors and have become delightfully good at appearing regal while secretly enjoying a very long, very slow day. If they could talk, perhaps they would say, "Welcome. No rush. Please walk slowly. We certainly do." They stand not as barriers, but as breaths, not as walls, but as transitions, not as defenses, but as gestures of calm hospitality. Through them, you step from one tempo of life into another, from noise into silence, from haste into grace. And they do all of this without drama, without insistence, without the slightest hint of rush. They simply stand and bid you enter. As you pass beneath the gentle arch of Amar Singh Gate, the world seems to shift into a softer version of itself, like a dream adjusting to a new scene. The gate doesn't rush you, it doesn't hurry your footsteps or push you forward. It stands behind you with the quiet encouragement of someone who simply nods and says, "Go on." The world inside is waiting at its own pace. And as you continue walking, you begin to understand that these gates, these two elegant stone guardians, shape the entire mood of the fort, not by force, but by presence. Inside the gateway, the light becomes calmer, as if it has been filtered through layers of history that have learned how to make brightness gentle. Shadows stretch in soft gradients, nothing harsh, nothing sharp. Even the smallest sounds seem to respect the quiet tone set by the gates. Footsteps become softer, voices lower instinctively. The atmosphere settles around you like a warm, velvety shawl. The gates have accomplished what only the most skilled hosts can achieve. They have shifted your rhythm without you noticing. What was once a city-paced tempo now becomes something slower, more fluid, almost melodic. It's as though the gates have whispered to the day itself, "Hush now, let everyone rest a little." And the day, charmed by their elegance, has obeyed. Delhi Gate, though no longer the main entrance, holds its own kind of magic from afar. You may not walk through it, but you feel its presence like the ghost of a royal greeting, the kind of greeting that once welcomed emperors, officials, and travelers who carried news across lands. Yet even in its former grandeur, Delhi Gate never tried to overwhelm. Instead, it seems content now to bask in the gentle breeze, letting time polish away any harshness until only softness remains. It is easy to imagine the two gates as old companions, quietly observing centuries of change. Perhaps they exchange silent comments to each other. Delhi Gate with a stately, wise tone, Amar Singh, Gate with a relaxed, easygoing warmth. If stone could chuckle, these gates might have done so often. They've witnessed anxious soldiers, hurried messengers, ambitious rulers, and curious wanderers. Yet through it all, they have remained calm, almost amused observers of humanity's endless rush. Their tranquility is contagious. The more time you spend lingering beneath Amar Singh Gate, the more you begin to feel the world outside slipping away. Your thoughts stretch out lazily like cats finding a sunbeam. Even your worries seem to slow, lounging quietly in the corner of your mind. The gates do not need to offer peace. They simply are peace carved into form. The carvings along the surface appear softer from this close. You notice floral motifs curling in graceful arcs, geometric shapes weaving in and out like dancers moving at half speed. These designs, though meticulously crafted, do not shout their beauty. They simply rest, gently announcing themselves like petals floating on still water. The artistry invites touch. Yet even without touching, you feel the warmth of centuries held in the stone. Light plays across the patterns in gentle waves like whispered laughter. As clouds drift overhead, the gate's colors shift subtly, from warm gold to tender amber to muted rose, never sudden, always smooth. Even the shadows they cast seem unhurried, settling on the ground, the way a lullaby settles into the evening air. With each moment that passes, the gates feel less like structures and more like sentinels of serenity. They do not guard the fort with threats, but with calm assurance. They keep chaos at bay, not with force, but with softness. They stand as reminders that boundaries can be gentle and that even the grandest entrance can whisper instead of shout. Walking deeper into the fort, you glance back toward the gate. For a moment, it feels like saying goodbye to someone who smiled at you softly, someone you may never know but will always remember. Amar Singh. Gate stands still, patient, unbothered, continuing its eternal greeting to the next quiet soul who wanders through. Delhi Gate, further away, watches like a tranquil elder, an old royal who has long since retired from ceremony and now enjoys the simple act of existing. You imagine them nodding to each other, exchanging thoughts in silence. Another visitor slowed down today. Good. Let them feel the peace. And just like that, you realize that these gates have done far more than allow you entry. They have transported you into a different pace of life, a sacred, slow pace, one that the fort itself has embraced for centuries. In their quiet presence, you feel held. In their gentle grandeur, you feel welcomed. In their timeless stillness, you feel the soft weightlessness of a mind beginning to drift, and as the breeze moves lightly through the archway, carrying the faintest scent of stone and memory, it feels like the gates are offering a final blessing. May your steps be soft, and may your heart be quiet. Chapter 4. Inside, where architecture learns to breathe slowly. There is a moment just as you step through the quiet thresholds of Agra Fort's inner world when the air seems to soften around you, like fabric gently brushing against your skin. The bustling rhythm that existed outside fades gradually, as though peeling away layer by layer until only stillness remains. What waits inside is not a grand proclamation of architecture, not a declaration of power or might, but a soft, slow breath, an inhale held for centuries, and an exhale that seems to unfurl gently in your direction. It feels almost as if the fort itself, with all its palaces, halls, and gardens, has agreed to breathe with you. The moment your footsteps cross into this inner sanctuary, you sense the shift immediately. The space is vast but not empty, open but not hollow. It spreads itself out in calm expanses like a peaceful landscape painted with generous strokes. Courtyards lie open like pages of a storybook, waiting patiently to be read. Pathways curve gently, guiding you without urgency, the way a melody drifts without insisting where your attention must go. Everything invites movement, but at a pace that feels unhurried, unforced, almost dreamlike. The first courtyard you encounter seems to cradle the sky itself. It is wide and spacious, yet it does not overwhelm. Instead, it makes room for the silence between thoughts. Sunlight shimmers softly on stone surfaces, warming them into shades of gold and peach. The wind glides through in a manner that suggests it has wandered these halls daily for hundreds of years and has long since forgotten how to be anything but gentle. Even your shadow feels calmer here, trailing behind you like a sleepy companion unwilling to rush ahead. As you wander deeper, each palace reveals itself not abruptly but gradually, like someone waking slowly from a pleasant dream. The architecture moves in long, effortless curves, with arches that rise like the soft hum of a lullaby. Columns stand not in stiff lines but in quiet harmony, as though they are musicians holding the opening notes of a soothing song. Even the floors seem to exude tranquility, smooth, unbroken plains that encourage your steps to glide rather than fall. There is a feeling that everything inside Agra Fort is participating in one unified breath. The stone walls inhale light, the corridors exhale cool shade. The patterns carved into marble whisper gentle stories, curling like tendrils of smoke, drifting through a calm evening. Even the birds perched high on the palace edges seem to slow their movements, hopping lightly, chirping softly, as if respecting the tempo set by centuries of serenity. One corridor leads into a garden that feels like a pause written into the architecture, a deliberate moment of rest. Blossoms sway in slow motion, their colors not shouting but humming softly. The grass spreads like a green sigh beneath the open sky, and the fountains, though once powerful, now gurgle with a lazy elegance, as though they too have decided to take the day off. A breeze floats across the garden, carrying a scent so faint and subtle that you can only describe it as the aroma of time choosing to move kindly. Here inside the fort, even silence has texture. It settles gently on your shoulders, wraps itself around your thoughts, and drapes across the ground like a silk cloth, It is not empty silence, but full silence. A silence with weight, presence, softness. You can feel it linger in every archway, rest in every curve of the stone. You sense it trailing behind you, following without pressing, without mocking, simply existing alongside you with the patience of something that has endured for ages. The halls themselves seem to understand the value of spaciousness. They open wide but do not swallow you. They stretch long but do not lose you. Their ceilings rise just high enough to encourage your thoughts to float upward, but not so high as to let them drift away. It is as though the architecture has perfected the art of balance. Not too grand, not too modest, just perfectly aligned with the rhythm of calm. In certain corners, subtle patterns appear, the gentle etchings of flowers blossoming forever in stone, their petals curling in perpetual softness. They seem carved by hands that understood tenderness more than showmanship. These floral forms do not demand admiration. Instead, they offer quiet companionship. Like old friends, with stories they will tell only if you remain still long enough to hear. As you continue your wandering, you might notice something delightful. Every courtyard, every hall, every passage seems to breathe. Not metaphorically, but almost physically. Light swells in, shade retreats, breeze drifts, and then the pattern shifts again. A slow, synchronized dance. And in this dance, you find yourself unconsciously matching its rhythm. Your breath deepens, your shoulders drop, your gaze softens. You begin to exist inside this architecture the way a note exists inside a song. There is something gently humorous in this realization. You came here seeking history perhaps, or art, or culture, yet this place gives you something entirely different. A reminder to relax. Agra Fort's interior does not boast. It does not sparkle with excessive ornamentation. Instead, it seems to pat your shoulder lightly and say, "Slow down, breathe with me." And strangely, wonderfully, you do. Stepping further inside, you find yourself entering a hall where the ceiling arches upward in a long, unbroken stretch of elegance, like a sigh made visible. The shape is smooth, effortless, graceful in a way that feels almost organic, as though the ceiling simply grew upward out of contentment rather than ambition. Light drifts through the far openings, pooling gently on the floor, in warm shapes that change slowly as the sun moves outside. The room feels alive, not with noise or movement, but with breath, deep, slow, and steady. Here, even the echoes behave politely. When your foot touches the floor, the sound does not bounce sharply. It glides away, softened by centuries of listening. You realize that this is a space not meant for hurried conversations or loud proclamations. It is a space designed for pauses, for the kind of pauses that let your thoughts settle like dust, floating through sunlight, drifting downward in gentle spirals. In one corner sits a platform made of pale stone, delicately carved yet undeniably grounded. It feels like a place where someone once stood to speak softly rather than loudly, as if the walls themselves insisted on gentleness. The air here carries a coolness that brushes your skin tenderly, reminding you of shaded porches in lazy summer afternoons where the world outside buzzes on, but you remain wrapped in a hush. You wander onward, and soon a series of archways unfold before you, each one a frame to a painting made of air and distance. Through one arch, you see another, and through that one another still, creating a corridor of diminishing shapes that invites your gaze to travel on as though the passage itself is whispering, "There is more calm this way. Come slowly." You step toward the arches, your feet instinctively quiet, your breath lengthening without effort. With each arch you pass, you feel more deeply absorbed into the fort's serene rhythm. The world thins into softness. Even the colors seem gentler, muted reds, pale golds, the quiet grays of old stone warmed by 1,000 sunsets. Nothing here is harsh. Nothing breaks the harmony. To one side, a smaller garden opens unexpectedly. Like a secret breath, the fort releases only for those who walk lightly. The moment you step inside, you sense the shift again. The grass, neatly resting under the sky, holds a green that soothes rather than dazzles. The flowers seem to bloom not in bursts, but in murmurs. Their petals hold a kind of sleepy elegance, like dancers moving at the end of a long, beautiful performance. You sit on a stone ledge. The fort seems to exhale, leaves tremble, but only a little. A bird hops nearby, glancing at you as if to say, "You finally matched the tempo." And indeed you have. The tempo of the fort is not the tempo of modern life. It is the tempo of stone, of centuries, of quiet spaces learning how to breathe. Walking again, you pass into a room lit by soft shadows. The patterns carved along the walls seem to emerge and retreat as the light shifts, appearing like gentle waves, gathering and dispersing. You run your fingertips across the cool surface, feeling the faint ridges of designs preserved by time. These designs do not attempt to impress. They comfort. They wrap themselves around the walls like calm thoughts. And then, even deeper inside, you discover a hall where the symmetry is so serene that you almost laugh. It is not the sharp, rigid symmetry of strict geometry. It is a relaxed, content symmetry, like someone arranging pillows on a couch until they feel just right. The fort seems to hum here, not loudly, not even audibly, but in spirit. A hum of balance, of gentle pride, of histories lived without rush. As you wander toward the final courtyard, a soft breeze strolls past you, brushing your skin with a tenderness that feels almost intentional. The courtyard opens wide, glowing with a light so calm it feels like dawn and dusk meeting in a quiet handshake. Here, time loosens. Here, the fort's entire breathing becomes clear. Inhale. Shade gathers. Exhale. Sunlight stretches. Inhale. Silence settles. Exhale. The wind replies. You realize then that the architecture inside Agra Fort is not simply built. It is alive in the way a forest is alive, or a poem is alive, or a lullaby is alive. It has rhythm. It has calm. It has a pulse made not of sound, but of presence. And you, without even noticing when it happened, have begun to breathe with it. Chapter 5. White Marble. Elegance before Photoshop was invented. There is a gentle magic that begins to shimmer the moment you step into the white marble heart of Agra Fort. It arrives softly, like moonlight unfolding across still water, or like a lullaby that has forgotten its words but remembers its melody. Inside this vast sanctuary of stone and silence, the world seems to slow into a tender whisper. And in that whisper stands the shining presence of Jahangir Mahal, Diwan-i-Am, and the many marble creations that rest inside the fort, calm, radiant, and effortlessly elegant. The transition from the deep red sandstone outside to the pale, serene marble within feels almost like stepping from sunset into dawn. The shift is gentle but unmistakable. Where the sandstone glows with warmth, the marble cools the air around it with a soft, pearly breath. It is the kind of beauty that does not dazzle with bright sparks or dramatic flourishes. Instead, it glows with a steady, serene confidence, like someone who knows their worth and has no need to announce it. Walking toward the marble palaces, you might feel your own steps slowing down, not because the ground changes, but because the atmosphere becomes more delicate, more ethereal, as though the air has tightened the strings of quietness by just a single perfect note. It almost feels like entering an art gallery curated by the moon, where everything is bathed in a sheen of silver that never clamors for attention, yet gently captures your gaze. Jahangir Mahal stands like a gentle monarch, refined, poised, elegant, but never flashy. The marble walls curve softly, catching the light in a way that makes them seem to breathe. Each surface holds a quiet glow, as if polished not by hands, but by centuries of morning light. You can almost imagine the artisans whispering to the stone, persuading it to reveal its inner softness, carving not with force, but with calm intention. Above you, the domes rise in smooth arcs, like half moons drifting across the sky. They carry a softness that makes even their height feel comforting rather than overwhelming. There is a gentle humor in their form too, as if each dome is a sleepy character stretching slowly upward, trying not to disturb the tranquility below. And somehow, despite their grand shape, the domes exude a hush, a gentle request that everyone beneath them speak softly, move slowly, breathe easily. In the carved patterns along the walls and columns, you find a delicate grace that seems nearly impossible to create by hand. Floral motifs curl like tendrils of a dream spreading through the cool marble. Geometric patterns slide smoothly along the edges, not sharp or rigid, but rounded slightly by time, like stones softened by rivers. You can feel the rhythm inside these carvings, a rhythm that is mellow, steady, almost hypnotic. It is the rhythm of hands that understood not just craftsmanship, but patience. All around, white marble blooms like frozen light, but unlike the blinding shine of modern materials, this marble glows with the gentlest radiance, the type of brightness that comforts the eyes instead of startling them. It is a softness that feels almost maternal, a glow that holds rather than reflects, that embraces rather than impresses. You might smile at the thought that all this beauty existed long before there were filters, editing apps, or high-resolution cameras. The marble does not need enhancement. It does not need contrast, saturation, or a flattering angle. It wakes each morning already perfect, already peaceful, already humming its quiet song of grace. If architecture could roll out of bed looking flawless, this is what it would look like. Walking deeper into the marble spaces, the Diwani-Am reveals itself like a whispered story. Unlike grand halls meant to overwhelm with power, this hall welcomes you with serenity. Its pillars rise gracefully, slender yet strong, like dancers frozen in the middle of a fluid, slow-motion movement. The air hangs gently between them, carrying a thin veil of light that makes everything look softened, blurred at the edges, dream-kissed. If you pause beneath one of the arches, you might feel the coolness of the marble beneath your fingertips. a coolness that settles into your skin like the touch of a calm stream. You may even imagine that the marble is keeping secrets of centuries, but sharing only the peaceful ones. The kind of secrets architecture tells only at night when all footsteps have quieted. Inside these palaces, even silence has a personality. It doesn't sit heavily, it drifts, dancing softly between the open spaces, touching the stone gently like someone brushing dust off a beloved book. It feels like an invitation to breathe slower, to look longer, to exist softer. Nothing inside these halls is loud, nothing competes for attention. Everything is balanced, beauty without excess, elegance without arrogance, brilliance without bragging. The Mughal architects understood something profoundly simple, that the most breathtaking creations are often the ones that whisper instead of shout. You might catch a glimpse of sunlight slipping through a carved window, scattering across the marble floor like spilled pearls. If the fort had a sense of humor, and by now maybe you believe it does, this light play might feel like its gentle attempt at decoration, a little sparkle added to brighten your path. And as you continue wandering, each step feels as if it sinks deeper into calm. The marble world around you behaves almost like a slow song, each curve a note, each shadow a soft drum beat, each breeze a quiet string humming through the air. Without noticing when it happens, you find yourself breathing with the same unhurried grace the marble has held for centuries. The architecture inside Agra Fort does more than stand. It soothes, it softens, it sings. As you wander deeper into the marble heart of Agra Fort, everything around you seems to exhale into an even softer version of itself. The air feels silkier here, as though it has slipped into a new rhythm, a gentler sway, a quieter pulse, a slower blink of the world. The white marble, with its cool glow and tender patterns, becomes not just material, but mood, a presence, a lullaby translated into architecture. The further you move into these halls, the more the marble begins to feel alive, not in the way living things move, but in the way quiet things listen. It listens to your footsteps, capturing each sound and sending it away softly like blowing a feather off an open palm. The echo never startles, it drifts, dissolving into the calm air. It is the kind of echo that says, "It's all right. Take your time." Everything here moves slowly. In the next chamber, the marble arches form a sequence of soft curves that rise like pale moons, ascending the sky in delicate procession. Each arch rests gently atop its columns, and each column stands with the confidence of stillness. They don't strain or push upward forcefully. Instead, they seem to enjoy the simple act of standing, rooted, patient, elegant in the most humble way. Even the shadows curve along their surfaces with a kind of respect, bending gracefully to match their rhythm. You might notice too how the intricate carvings shift their mood depending on where the light falls. In bright patches, they shimmer with a feather-light glow, almost as though the marble blushes in the sun. In the shade, the carvings deepen into soft whispers, their patterns becoming secrets held close to the stone. Nothing about them is sharp. Even the lines meant to define a petal or a leaf feel rounded by time, smoothed by centuries of gentle air brushing across them. Moving forward, you step into a long gallery where the marble floor stretches outward like a calm lake frozen mid-ripple. The floor has a faint, natural sheen, the kind that needs no polishing and no enhancement, only the soft companionship of sunlight. As you walk, it feels less like you are stepping on stone and more like you are gliding across the still surface of a dream. Every step seems to quiet your heartbeat a little more, coaxing your thoughts to drift rather than march. The Mughal architects had a talent for balance that feels almost humorous in its perfection. They managed to create spaces that feel regal yet unassuming, rich yet tender, impressive yet never overbearing. It is as if they understood that true grandeur isn't loud, it's peaceful. It settles into the bones like warm tea. It fills the room without dominating it. And above all, it knows exactly how to stand still without losing its glow. You pause near a jaroka, a delicate window balcony carved into lace-like patterns. Through it, the outside world appears softened, as if brushed with a dreamy filter long before filters were invented. The view is crisp, yet strangely gentle, as though the marble itself is toning down the sharp edges of reality. A quiet breeze slips through the openings, cooling your cheeks with the same tenderness as a whispered goodnight. It becomes easy to imagine noble figures of the past standing here, not in grand postures or dramatic scenes, but simply breathing, resting, watching the sky turn. There is something profoundly human about the architecture. It creates space not just for ceremony, but for ease, for moments of calm where nothing needs to happen except the continuation of the moment itself. Further inside, another marble room waits. Its ceiling curves like a gentle wave suspended in time. Light glides over it in soft streaks, as though sunlight itself has decided to move more gracefully within these walls. The room feels sacred, not in a ceremonial sense, but in a deeply personal one. The kind of sacred that exists in quiet mornings, in long exhales, in the tender stillness before sleep. Here the marble appears almost weightless. Though it is solid and unmoving, it holds a glow that feels airy, almost floating. You might catch yourself wondering how something so heavy can feel so light. Perhaps that is the essence of Mughal design, turning stone into softness, architecture into emotion, history into hush. The next courtyard opens like a peaceful yawn. Its marble pathways wind gently around small gardens, each one resting calmly beneath the open sky. The flowers bloom with mild colors that harmonize rather than contrast. The grass seems trimmed not by blades but by time itself, which has learned to move gently inside these walls. Even the birds sound different here, their calls quieter, rounder, as if they have adapted to the marble's soft personality. In this place, laughter would not echo sharply. It would melt into the air like a warm smile. Even your own breathing feels quieter, slower, sweeter. The marble teaches you, without words, to ease into the moment. And then, as you walk underneath another arch, the breeze plays a small trick on you. It slips past your shoulder with a hint of coolness that feels almost playful, as if the fort itself is teasing gently, reminding you not to take its majesty too seriously. The marble may be regal, but it is not proud. It seems perfectly content to be admired quietly, appreciated slowly, adored gently. The final chamber you discover glows with the softest light of all. The marble in this room holds a cool radiance that resembles moonlight resting on the surface of water. It feels like the kind of room where time might sit down beside you, stretch its legs, and say, "Let's stay here a while." And perhaps you would, because in this chamber, the world becomes a lullaby. The air hums, with deep stillness. The walls drift into gentle half-shadows, and the marble, oh the marble, seems to hold every breath you've taken inside the fort, weaving them into a soft rhythm that resonates in your chest. It becomes clear then. The white marble of Agra Fort does not shine, it glows. It does not impress, it soothes. It does not demand attention, it invites rest. And as you leave this final space, stepping lightly back toward the world outside, you feel softened too, your thoughts calmer, your breath deeper, your heart quieter. You walk away glowing just a little, as if the marble has lent you some of its moonlit serenity. Chapter 6. Mughal Mix and Match, the surprisingly smooth architectural blend. There is a certain softness that settles in the air when you begin exploring the architectural blend inside Agra Fort, a softness so smooth, so effortlessly calm, that you might feel as though the walls themselves are humming a quiet lullaby. Mughal architecture has always been known for its elegance, but within this fort, the mixture of Persian, Turkish, and Indian influences becomes something gentler, something warmer, something that feels as though it has been steeped in centuries of peaceful breathing. The exterior of the fort, with its broad sweeps of red sandstone, stands like a warm blanket laid across history, steady, grounding, deeply rooted in the earth. But step inside and everything seems to shift into a delicate, moonlit glow of white marble, as if you've wandered into the soft center of a shell. The contrast is surprisingly soothing. Outside, the fort looks like a bold guardian watching the horizon. Inside, it becomes the elegant storyteller who sits you down and gently whispers ancient tales in a softened voice. It is in this contrast that the Mughal mix and match philosophy reveals itself, not in loud declarations but in subtle harmonies. Nothing feels forced, nothing feels mismatched. The red sandstone and white marble do not compete. They coexist in a way that feels like a gentle merging of sunrise and moonlight, each element offering what the other lacks, forming a whole more peaceful than either alone. Walking beneath the arches, you can feel the Persian influence like a cool breeze brushing past your cheek. Graceful lines, curved silhouettes, and spaces designed to stretch thought and sight. The arches do not rise abruptly. They unfold, blooming slowly like petals that have decided to open only halfway, saving the rest of their flourish for another day. These arches feel like conversations spoken softly, warm welcomes, gentle suggestions, friendly pauses. Beside this, the Turkish touch appears in the symmetry, the careful, balanced compositions that make the fort feel grounded even when adorned with delicate patterns. It is a balance so natural that you might not consciously notice it. Your eyes simply feel comfortable, your mind feels settled, like walking into a perfectly tidy room that somehow also feels lived in, nothing too rigid, nothing too casual. Just enough order to soothe your thoughts. And then there is the Indian influence, warm and familiar, wrapping itself around the foreign elements like a soft shawl. You see it in the floral carvings blooming along marble surfaces, in the rhythmic patterns etched into pillars, in the playful shapes that appear almost as though the artisans carved them with a smile. Indian craftsmanship brings life to the structure. Not loud life, not chaotic life, but the kind of quiet aliveness found in a garden at dusk. Together, these influences do not clash. They sway gently like dancers who know each other's movements by heart, stepping gracefully in and out of the spotlight without ever bumping shoulders. Even the most complex details feel relaxed, as though the artisans paused often, taking a breath, listening to the stone, hearing what it wished to become. One of the most charming aspects of Mughal blending is how effortlessly it avoids excess. Nothing feels overdone. The walls do not scream for attention. The decorations do not overwhelm. Instead, every design choice feels like a soft nod of appreciation toward beauty, a nod that says, we can be elegant without being loud. Even the domes, which rise with impressive stature, do so with the composure of someone stretching after a long, peaceful nap. From the red exterior to the glowing interior, everything aligns into a beautifully quiet harmony. If the fort were a gift box, the sandstone would be the simple, sturdy wrapping, the kind tied neatly without curls or glitter, while the marble inside would be the delicate surprise, the quiet sparkle hidden underneath. And yet even that sparkle never shouts. It glows with humility like moonlight on smooth water. Moving through the halls, you notice how different influences greet you like soft personalities. Persian arcs whisper hello with elegant curves. Turkish geometry straightens its back politely. Indian floral carvings sway in small, content circles. They do not argue, they do not compete. They simply exist alongside each other, like old friends sharing tea under the same tree, each bringing something unique to the moment. The deeper you walk, the more you begin to breathe like the fort, slowly, quietly, gently. The blend of influences becomes less about design and more about rhythm, a slow rhythm, a calm rhythm, the rhythm of stone that has learned the art of stillness. And somewhere in the mix, a small laugh seems to linger, hidden in the patterns, tucked in the shadows, embedded in the marble. A laugh that says, look how well we match, even though we come from different worlds. Perhaps beauty simply means getting along peacefully. Stepping farther into the interior, you find yourself entering a long hallway where all three influences, the Persian, the Turkish, and the Indian, intertwine so seamlessly that you might forget where one ends and another begins. The arches begin to soften the air around you, shaping it into curves and shadows that feel gentle on the mind. It becomes clear that Mughal blending was never meant to impress in loud tones. It was meant to soothe. The sandstone, still faintly visible in the background, provides a steady warmth. You can sense it like a comforting hand placed lightly over your shoulder. Meanwhile, the marble glows in its soft, cool manner, like a whisper across your cheek. The contrast between these two, the warm red and the gentle white, creates a tender visual melody. And in that melody, you hear echoes of three worlds meeting in quiet conversation. Sometimes you catch the Persian voice in the sweeping arches, long, smooth, poetic lines that feel like verses drifting through silent air. Sometimes you feel the Turkish presence in the symmetry and balance, the way each line seems to understand its place perfectly, never pushing, never shrinking. And then you see India in the details, flowers carved with affection, patterns that curl like vines seeking sunlight, shapes that seem to smile as you pass. Imagine a painter blending three colors. If done roughly, the result becomes muddy, but here the blending is so delicate that every color remains visible, distinct, yet harmonized. The Mughal palette does not smear, it breathes together. If you pause in one of the smaller chambers, you might feel the shift in temperature. The marble cools your skin. The sandstone warms your feet through the floor. The air seems to move differently, slow, silky, unhurried. Even light behaves more gracefully here, drifting rather than streaming, settling rather than shining. Standing inside this fusion, the thought may cross your mind. How did they manage such a balance without blueprints, digital models, or Photoshop filters? And yet somehow they did perfectly. The Mughal artisans seem to carry harmony within their fingertips. Their work does not feel engineered, it feels breathed into existence. And perhaps that is why this architecture feels so alive, even centuries later. The Persian arches behave like thoughtful guardians. The Turkish patterns stand with disciplined calm. The Indian carvings dance with quiet joy. Together they form a gentle ecosystem of beauty, a world where differences do not compete but complete one another. Walking deeper still, you enter a courtyard where sunlight spills over the marble like warm milk. Here the blend becomes even more evident. Turkish symmetry frames the space. Persian arches guide your gaze. Indian ornamentation adds gentle sparkle along the edges. It feels like being inside a perfectly blended tea, each ingredient distinct, yet none overpowering. Everything tastes like balance. A soft breeze wanders across the courtyard carrying hints of old seasons. For a moment you almost imagine the breeze sighing contentedly as it brushes against the warm sandstone and then cools against the marble. Even the air seems to enjoy the contrast. If the fort had a sense of humor, and by now you might suspect it does, it would probably wink at you and say, "See? Mixing can be beautiful when everyone agrees to whisper instead of shout." In the final hall you explore, the blending reaches its most graceful expression. The arches curve like quiet questions. The patterns answer in soft affirmations. The marble lifts the space, the sandstone grounds it, and together the combined influence becomes a lullaby of form, a soft melody of stillness. You breathe in, the space breathes with you. And somewhere in the gentle balance of red and white, of curve and line, of bloom and order, you understand the Mughal secret. Harmony is not about sameness. It is about peaceful coexistence. And Agra Fort is a masterpiece of that peace. Chapter 7, where emperors lived and simply lived. There is a gentle quietness that wraps itself around you the moment you imagine Agra Fort, not as a monument, not as an architectural marvel, not as a historical landmark, but simply as a home, an imperial dwelling where Mughal emperors once lived their lives in a rhythm so steady, so unhurried, that even the stones seem to have memorized it. Before battles and politics, before legends and stories, this place was simply where emperors woke up, stretched, breathed, and wandered through their day with the calm assurance of people who knew time would wait for them. Inside these vast red walls, life once unfolded in a soft, measured cadence. There were no recorded dramas, no grand crises echoing through the corridors, nothing that history felt compelled to underline with bold ink. Instead, what remains is the subtle impression of routine, peaceful, predictable, almost domestically serene. And there is something tender in that, something soothing in the idea that even emperors, with their crowns and silks and responsibilities, once walked slowly through these gardens. the way anyone might stroll through a quiet morning, letting the breeze brush their cheeks. The corridors of Agra Fort carry this softness still. They stretch long and mellow like thoughts drifting lazily across a sleepy mind. Each hallway feels as though it was designed for unhurried footsteps, for walks taken not to reach a destination, but to enjoy the gentle echo of one's own movement. The arches do not rise with dramatic flair. They swell upward gracefully, breathing in and out the faint rhythm of centuries. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the fort sigh, one of those slow, contented sighs that people make when sinking into a comfortable chair. The emperors who lived here must have understood tranquility in a way few rulers ever could. The very placement of each garden, the distance between chambers, the slow curves of the pathways, everything suggests a life lived at half speed, a life that valued pauses as much as progress. These spaces were made not only for ruling, but for existing, for sitting quietly under the shade of carved balconies, for strolling through courtyards bathed in soft light, for breathing in the fragrance of flowers that bloomed with the patience of royalty. Imagine for a moment one of these emperors beginning his morning. No rush, no flurry of attendants, just the gentle rustling of curtains in the early breeze, the muted footsteps of servants who knew how to tread lightly, the murmured greetings exchanged with the soft politeness of people accustomed to calm. He might walk through a long veranda, his robes sweeping gently behind him, the marble cool beneath his feet. Perhaps he paused at a charoka window, watching the light settle slowly over the Yamuna River. Nothing urgent, nothing loud, just a moment taken, appreciated, savored. The fort seems built for that kind of moment, for the lingering, the drifting, the unrushed. Gardens open themselves in relaxed squares, inviting slow wandering. Pools reflect the sky in still, glassy surfaces, unbroken except for the occasional ripple stirred by a passing breeze. Even the birds here seem to chirp more softly, as though respecting the hush of imperial routine. And this hush, this incredible hush, is what remains most vivid even now. It floats through the architecture like a fragrance that refuses to fade. Inside the living quarters, the walls speak in warm murmurs. Not literal speech, of course, but the kind of sensory memory that rises from stone when touched by imagination. These rooms do not boast. They do not flash with extravagance. They offer comfort, muted, elegant, grounded comfort. You can almost picture cushions arranged in quiet corners, carpets laid gently over stone floors, lanterns glowing with soft amber light. Even the sunlight coming through the carved screens feels filtered, softened, as though the very air inside the fort believes in protecting the eyes from anything too bright. There is humor in the simplicity of it all. This grand fort, known worldwide for its scale and history, was essentially a place where emperors simply lived. They ate, they slept, they walked, they talked, they contemplated. They existed in a slow, steady, measured pulse that seems to echo still. For all the pomp associated with royalty, there is something delightfully human about imagining a king strolling through his courtyard, thinking mundane thoughts like, "The jasmine smells nice today," or perhaps, "I hope the tea isn't too strong." Even emperors, after all, are just people who also appreciate a good, calm morning. The architecture supports this gentle truth. Nothing about the layout forces urgency. Nothing insists on speed. Each palace chamber flows into the next with the softness of fabric draping over a shoulder. The pathways wind rather than slice. The transitions between spaces are so smooth that your body naturally relaxes into the rhythm of the fort, as if the very stones encourage you to breathe slower, to let go of tension, to settle into your own quiet presence. And there is a profound intimacy in recognizing that these halls once carried the everyday footsteps of rulers who are now legends. They did not always stride with purpose or command. Sometimes they simply meandered, the way anyone meanders in a peaceful home. They paused to admire a flower. They lingered near a fountain. They sat in shaded corners, letting thoughts drift without urgency. Agra Fort, in this inner world, feels less like an imperial complex and more like a sanctuary for the slow and steady rhythm of being alive. As you wander deeper into the residential heart of Agra Fort, a sense of steady calm begins to settle over everything, like a soft blanket of silence gently lowering itself over the world. The spaces become more intimate, more personal, as though the architecture is guiding you not into history, but into the warm, quiet pulse of daily imperial life. These were not merely chambers made for ruling. They were chambers made for living, resting, thinking, and breathing at a pace untroubled by the frantic beat of time. The gardens here, tucked into open courtyards, feel like extensions of the emperor's minds, places where ideas were allowed to drift like petals carried by the wind. The grass stretches with a gentle humility, not manicured into harsh lines, but shaped softly by years of sunlight and footsteps that never hurried. The flowers that bloom here seem to understand the atmosphere of the place. They open slowly, with a serene confidence, as though aware that no one will rush them. The air smells faintly sweet, but in the mildest, quietest way, like a fragrance that forgot to announce itself and ended up being more beautiful because of it. A fountain murmurs in one corner, its water sliding over smooth stone in a rhythm too slow to be called flowing. It moves the way a sleepy thought moves through the mind, wandering, pausing, then wandering again. You can easily imagine an emperor standing here, watching the ripples form, not in contemplation of war or diplomacy, but in contemplation of nothing at all. That kind of peaceful nothingness that arrives only when the world finally stops demanding things of you. Inside the chambers, the ceilings arch with soft, steady curves. They never climb abruptly or drop suddenly. They rise like peaceful breaths lifted toward the sky. The walls feel warm, though made of stone, because they carry memories that are gentle rather than heavy. You sense that laughter once lived here, not the loud, rowdy laughter of celebration, but the lighter, private kind, shared between family members, echoing lightly against the marble before dissolving into the evening air. Every doorway you pass through seems to whisper an invitation rather than an instruction. Instead of saying enter, it seems to say, take your time. And you do. The architecture rewards slowness. You notice more when you move gently, small carvings along the base of a pillar, a sliver of light falling through ornate latticework, the faint warmth of sunlight stored in a patch of marble. Even the shadows relax here. They lie softly on the floor, not sharp-edged, but blurred at the fringes, as if they too are living at a slower tempo. You may pause in one long hall where the floor stretches smooth and cool beneath your feet. It feels like a corridor designed specifically for quiet walking. No urgency hides in the walls, no echo startles your steps. Every sound you make dissolves instantly into comfort, like sugar melting into warm water. This is where emperors likely strolled in the early hours of morning, perhaps with a shawl over their shoulders, perhaps thinking about nothing but the way the breeze drifted through the open arches. And there is something charmingly human in imagining them so. We often picture emperors as powerful figures perched on thrones, issuing commands with fierce authority. But here, inside these calm walls, you realize they were also simply people who needed rest, who liked quiet mornings, who appreciated the beauty of a still garden and the comfort of a cool hallway. These chambers were not battlefields, they were sanctuaries. In some rooms, the windows open out toward the river. The breeze carries the soft humidity of water and the warm sigh of sunlit days. Curtains once fluttered gently here, brushing lightly against carved frames. An emperor might have sat near such a window with a cup of warm drink, looking out at the gentle path of the Yamuna, flowing unhurriedly past the fort. There is something grounding about imagining him there, not addressing his court, not meeting generals, but simply sitting, breathing, watching the water glide. Even the servants' movements must have matched this quiet rhythm. You can almost picture them walking carefully down the corridors, balancing trays of fruit or bowls of flowers, placing each object with deliberate care so as not to disturb the peaceful hum that filled the air. Their footsteps would have been soft, their voices low, their days steady and predictable. A peaceful routine that shaped the life of the fort as much as the emperors did. Walking deeper still, you reach an open pavilion, an airy space with columns slender as resting birds. Here the sunlight drapes itself over everything, warm but never harsh. The emperor may have walked here in the evenings, letting the last rays of the sun settle across his shoulders before night arrived. You can almost feel that golden hour lingering in the marble, waiting patiently for each day to recreate it again and again. The fort in these inner quarters carries no traces of chaos, no tension, no rushing energy. It is as though the entire structure was built with the intention of protecting not just the emperor's body, but his peace. Every curve, every breeze, every soft shadow feels orchestrated to cradle the mind in softness. And as you continue moving through this dreamlike interior, you begin to understand the unspoken truth of Agra Fort's design. It is not a place of spectacle, it is a place of rest. A place that exists to hold the stillness of those who lived inside its walls. Here, emperors were not towering myths. They were human beings moving slowly through their days, breathing gently, thinking quietly, living simply, and somehow, that simplicity has survived all these centuries, wrapped softly into the stone, waiting gently for anyone who enters to feel it. Chapter 8, UNESCO nods. Agra moves up in the world. There are moments in history that arrive not with thunder or fireworks, but with the gentlest tilt of acknowledgement. small, quiet gestures that nonetheless ripple softly across time. In 1983, Agra Fort received one such gesture. It wasn't a parade nor a dramatic declaration shouted from rooftops. It was simply UNESCO leaning in, giving a thoughtful, appreciative nod, and whispering, "Yes, this place belongs among the world's treasures." And in that soft recognition, something warm settled over the old red walls, a kind of global embrace, a confirmation of what the fort had known all along, that stillness, beauty, and patience are worthy of honor. The fort, of course, did not puff up with pride. It did not straighten its already straight walls or polish its already glowing marble. No. In perfect Agra Fort fashion, it accepted the recognition with its usual calm poise, like someone who has been sitting in meditation for centuries and only opens one eye briefly to say, "Thank you. That is very kind," before returning to its serene inner quiet. Being named a World Heritage Site did not change its behavior. It simply continued being what it had always been, quietly magnificent. If anything, the UNESCO acknowledgement felt like the universe softly confirming what travelers, architects, historians, and daydreamers had felt for ages. Agra Fort was not just old, it was not just beautiful, it was not just grand. It possessed a kind of gentle dignity, a presence that invited you not to stare, but to slow down, breathe, and notice the way history can hum a lullaby when given enough space. Imagine the moment this recognition drifted into the fort's awareness, if forts were capable of such things. Perhaps the red sandstone walls quivered just slightly, like someone receiving a compliment they didn't expect but deeply appreciate. Perhaps the marble chambers brightened a little under the sun, glowing with a soft blush of flattered pride. Perhaps the arches stretched ever so subtly, like a cat waking from a nap and deciding that this was a fine day to continue napping. The Yamuna River may have flowed a bit more gently that day, as though joining in the celebration with its own understated style, and the breeze weaving its way through the corridors might have added a soft flourish, humming along the carved balconies like a musician offering a quiet serenade to mark the occasion. But truly, the magic of the UNESCO recognition is not in the moment it happened. It is in how naturally it fit the fort's character. Some places earn prestige by shouting. Agra Fort earned it by whispering. Walking through the fort today, you can feel that whisper still. Soft, unhurried, confident, in the way only centuries of being admired can teach. The recognition did not weigh the fort down with expectations. Instead, it seemed to lift it slightly like a gentle hand beneath the chin. Not to change it, just to acknowledge its worth. Travelers visiting after 1983 often speak of a certain calmness that surrounds the place, a kind of peaceful gravity that draws you in without gripping too tightly. You enter through the great gates and immediately feel the shift, as though you've stepped not just into a fort, but into a deeper tempo of life, a slower tempo, a kinder tempo, the kind of tempo UNESCO probably nodded along to as well, thinking, "Ah, yes, this place understands time better than most." Inside, the fort's vast courtyards open wide, but not in a way that overwhelms. They open like familiar arms, steady, warm, inviting. The gardens seem to breathe with you, their leaves trembling lightly in rhythms that mirror your own heartbeat as it softens. The marble chambers glow softly, like lanterns carved out of moonlight. The sandstone walls radiate the warmth of centuries of sunrises, and all the while the silence speaks. Not the heavy silence of emptiness, nor the awkward silence of uncertainty. This is the silence of contentment, the silence of a place that knows exactly what it is: a heritage site, a resting ground for history, a safe cradle for memory, a sanctuary for slow living. One of the most beautiful things about Agra Fort's post-UNESCO life is how effortlessly it continues being itself. Many places, upon receiving recognition, adjust themselves to match expectations. They fuss, they posture, they preen. But Agra Fort? Oh no. It has perfected the art of simply existing. You can almost hear it saying, with its walls and courtyards and long corridors, "I was peaceful before. I am peaceful now." Nothing changes except the number of people who stop to appreciate the peace. And truly, the number has grown. Travelers from around the world come not for spectacle, but for soft wonder. They walk through the halls and feel their thoughts slow into gentle shapes. They rest in the gardens and feel the breeze untangle the knots in their minds. They listen to the silence and find it filled, not with emptiness, but with presence. The fort's calm demeanor has a way of rubbing off on people. Even those who arrive with hurried steps and buzzing energy often find themselves slowing to match the environment. Feet clack less loudly. Voices soften into murmurs. Breathing becomes deeper, smoother. Perhaps that is the real magic behind the UNESCO nod. Not the title itself, but the acknowledgement that places like this, places that soothe, places that steady, places that breathe slowly, are essential to the world. And Agra Fort breathes slowly indeed. It always has. Moving deeper inside the fort after its UNESCO recognition is like slipping into the second verse of a lullaby, familiar in tone, deeper in feeling, softer in rhythm. The fort, now gently affirmed in its global significance, carries on with its serene hum as though nothing has changed. And truly, nothing has. The stones do not rush. The arches do not swell with pride. The gardens do not arrange themselves into stricter patterns. Everything continues in its same calm heartbeat. But perhaps what has changed is the way visitors see it. The knowledge that this place is a World Heritage Site seems to wrap the experience in an added layer of stillness. People wander through its corridors with an extra measure of reverence. Not loud, dramatic reverence, but the gentle kind that feels like walking close to a sleeping child. There is a softness to their footsteps, a quietness to their eyes, a willingness to pause longer in the gardens, to linger beneath the archways, to allow the silence to seep into the spaces of their mind that have long forgotten how to slow down. The fort absorbs this attention with effortless grace. It has always been good at receiving people. It does not crowd around them or overshadow them. It simply makes room, wide, generous, forgiving room for anyone seeking a slower pace. And everyone, sooner or later, begins to move slower. Even the breeze seems to know this rhythm. It weaves through the halls like a silk ribbon, sometimes brushing the sandstone, sometimes gliding over marble. It lingers near the carved screens, slipping in and out of latticework like a playful ghost trying not to wake anyone. It carries with it the faint scent of warm earth, old stone, and the distant river, scents that feel older than memory. The fort's quietness, ironically, makes the small sounds more meaningful. a bird calling in the distance, footsteps tapping softly along a shaded corridor, the faint drip of water settling after rain. These sounds do not break the silence, they complete it, stitch it together, give it texture. You might imagine UNESCO returning today, stepping into the cool shadow of the fort and smiling quietly, as though to say, yes, this was the right decision. The gardens remain some of the fort's most soothing spaces. They seem to understand the gentle responsibility of holding history without tightening their grip. Their lawns stretch softly beneath the sunlight. Their flowers sway in breezes that never hurry. Every leaf and petal seems to know how to exist without rushing, an art modern life often forgets. In one such garden, you may find yourself sitting on a low stone bench, one hand resting lightly on the warm surface. The temperature of the stone feels just right, not too warm, not too cool, like a hand that has been holding sunlight for you. From here, you see the walls rising, not in intimidation, but in reassurance. Their height no longer seems imposing. Instead, it feels protective, like the walls are keeping the modern world at bay just long enough for you to breathe properly. And breathe you do slowly, deeply, evenly. It becomes easy to understand why emperors could live peacefully here. The fort is not just a structure, it is an atmosphere. Imagine how many mornings unfolded here in quiet calm, how many evenings settled gently over the marble shelves of light, how many conversations were spoken not in urgency but in low, thoughtful tones. This continuity of peace is perhaps the real legacy UNESCO recognized, a place that has known war yet chooses grace, a place built for strength yet exudes softness, a place that could command attention, yet whispers instead. As you rise from the bench and walk toward the next courtyard, the fort seems to move with you, not literally, of course, but in spirit. Its rhythm becomes your rhythm. Its stillness becomes your stillness. Its breath becomes your breath. The corridors feel longer now, but in a pleasant way, like when a song stretches itself into a slow, soothing outro. The arches guide you gently, their curves reminding you that straight lines are not always necessary. The lattice screens offer shadows shaped like delicate lace. Everything feels composed, but not rigid, elegant, but not cold, ancient, but never tired. Even in the busiest tourist seasons, the fort seems to maintain a hidden quiet, a reserve of tranquility that no crowd can quite erase. It's as if the fort knows how to tuck peace into its corners, saving some always for those who need it most. And perhaps that is why Agra Fort remained unchanged by UNESCO's nod. Recognition did not elevate it. It merely illuminated what was already there, a place where history rests, a place where architecture breathes, a place where the world slows down, just enough for you to hear yourself again. By the time you step back toward the gate, the fort offers nothing dramatic as farewell. No trumpets, no announcements, no dramatic flourish, only its usual gentle presence. A soft, steady whisper, walk peacefully, come back slowly. A soft descent into quiet. And so as we drift to the end of this gentle journey through Agra Fort, the slow-breathing walls, the moon-washed marble, the quiet gardens where even the wind seems to nap, we arrive at a place where stories no longer need telling. They simply rest like folded blankets at the edge of a long day. Everything about this fort, every sandstone curve and marble whisper, seems to settle into a hush that wraps itself around you like a soft scarf of time. It does not cling, it does not pull. It simply invites you to be still for a moment longer. Imagine the fort now, standing in the calm evening light. The sun melts into warm gold, sliding down the slopes of the red walls with the same softness as a hand smoothing a sheet before sleep. Shadows stretch, but not dramatically. They lengthen like a cat taking its time to find a comfortable spot. The breeze drifts across the courtyards with the gentlest touch, cool but kind, carrying faint echoes of centuries-old footsteps that never meant to hurry. Everything feels toned down, like the whole world has taken a deep breath and decided, yes, tonight will be peaceful. The fort itself seems to hum softly at this hour. If buildings could speak, perhaps Agra Fort would say something like, "You've seen enough for today. Come rest a while." Not a command, just a quiet suggestion. Warm, thoughtful, almost maternal. The kind of suggestion you didn't know you needed until you heard it. The kind that settles into your bones and tells them, ever so gently, that it's all right to let go for now. And maybe that's the real magic of places like this. They don't simply teach you history, they teach you slowness. They remind you that beauty doesn't always arrive shining loudly. It often lives in the quiet moments, in the steady breath between one step and the next. They teach you that being still is not the same as being stuck. Sometimes stillness is the sweetest movement of all. As night gathers, the marble begins to glow with a pale softness, almost like a lantern crafted from moonlight. The walls take on the color of deep tea, brewed long and slow. The air cools into something calm enough to touch your skin without waking the thoughts behind your eyes. Even the stars seem to blink more lazily overhead, as though they too have leaned into the fort's unhurried rhythm. And perhaps tonight, as you settle into your own bed somewhere far from Agra, a little of that rhythm will travel with you. Maybe you'll breathe a bit slower. Maybe the noise of the day will loosen its grip, falling away like dust, sliding off an old windowsill. Maybe you'll feel something inside you. Unclench, soften, unwind, like the fort offering you one last sleepy smile before closing its doors for the night. So let this be your gentle landing place. A soft cushion of words, a quiet room made of sentences, a lullaby shaped from stone and time. Thank you truly for walking through this dreamlike journey, step by step, breath by breath, thought by quiet thought. Thank you for letting the fort's stillness settle around you, and for allowing the story to curl into the soft spaces of your evening. It has been a gentle honor to guide you through each calm corridor and moonlit hall. And now, may your night unfold like the slowest, sweetest chapter. May your thoughts drift like leaves on a calm river. May your dreams arrive as softly as marble catching first light. May your breathing deepen into the peaceful rhythm of ancient walls resting under starlight, wishing you the kind of sleep that feels like being wrapped in warm silence, the kind that cradles you, comforts you, and carries you into morning with a smile. Good night and sleep deeply.